is Halloween, October 31st, 2023. I am a surveillance state dissenter, Kevin Hoare, and I am here with Mr. Faith in Congress, LOL, David Darnell.
Yeah, so I think it was yesterday. It was yesterday I heard a soundbite on the radio of the new speaker. And one of the things he says, and we're going to restore faith in Congress. And I laughed out loud by myself for quite some time. I thought, does anyone have faith in Congress?
Well, the popularity rating of Congress is usually in the 25% range.
Yeah, just slightly lower than shingles.
Yes.
Herpes.
Yeah, and more widespread, actually. It also doesn't require physical contact to spread either, or prior infection with what was it that leads to shingles? Not smallpox, chickenpox or something.
I really don't know.
Yeah, I think if you have chickenpox, you can get shingles later. So you don't even need that. Congress requires no prior infection,
No,
no physical contact. It's
no. And my Twitter rant went on to say that if they repealed Obamacare, completely defunded Planned Parenthood, a couple of things we heard were going to happen, and if they spent 50% or less of the revenue that comes in, then I think they would gain a little respect. Faith, I don't think so. I don't think anybody should have faith in government, any part of government.
Yeah, placing your faith in government seems to be misplaced. There's far better things like the Lord to do that with. And government should simply be held accountable and stay within its defined constitutional boundaries.
Yeah.
And do that,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, their only interest in your welfare is how much money they can get from your welfare. The only interest in your personal liberty is whether or not they can sell it or take it. And, I think we're well beyond constitutionally limited federal government guidelines. And I see absolutely nothing for me to indicate that I should trust anything from government.
Yeah, no, totally. That's like kind of a no-brainer, but then we've got a lot of people with no brains. So,
but the speaker's going to restore faith in Congress, Kevin.
Well, you may as well try to achieve the impossible, and then we'll see how close he comes. I guess.
Shoot for the moon and hopefully hit a treetop.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I think we should shoot for anarchy, and maybe we'd get limited government.
That could be. That would actually be a way. It's all what you aim at, right?
Well, it's yeah. I mean, considering it's difficult to actually hit what you aim at, and whatever you do hit might be better than certainly smaller limited government would be better than anarchy. But I think if we aim for anarchy and miss, maybe we'll end up with a government whose size, scope, and reach is tolerable for the American way of life.
Yep. Well, by the way, this is a piece of news I just learned about, which I haven't even told you about yet. But apparently, Biden has really blundered in New Hampshire with the primary. Well, we know he didn't do it, but somebody did this on his behalf since he doesn't know where he is and what he's doing. But his re-election run might be in deep trouble, which, as if it wasn't already, just caused by the fact that he exists and he breathes. Here's what happened. So they moved up the South Carolina primary. There were a bunch of Biden people that forced the DNC to move the South Carolina primary, which is supposedly South Carolina. They'll vote for Biden even if he's in a coma or whatever. And they were the key to him winning in 2020 in the Democrat nomination process. So they moved it up. And because he didn't do so well in New Hampshire, he finished 5th in 2020. Biden didn't. So they moved South Carolina up to take over and be in front of New Hampshire. Well, that didn't sit well with the New Hampshire state legislature. That superseded the rule passed by the National Committee and insisted that New Hampshire remain the first primary in the country. So the DNC penalized the state by banning them from allocating delegates based on any primary that takes place before South Carolina. However, they could not stop from holding a beauty contest in which the candidates would run, but the delegates would not be allocated. But the fact is, a lot of this stuff in the early primaries aren't based on how many delegates you get. How many delegates you get from the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primary is negligible. Right. It is a beauty contest. That's the whole point of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
it's a press availability.
So New Hampshire will have the first state primary, but no delegates will be awarded. Not much of a penalty since the state is allocated so few anyway. So Biden will not appear on the New Hampshire presidential primary ballot and will have to depend on write-ins to generate a showing. Can you
really?
That? Yes.
Well, who else is going to be on the Democrat primary ballot?
Well, it's not going to be RFK Jr. because he withdrew.
Right.
And I guess, is it Marianne Williamson, that author? And also this guy that just filed opposing Biden, Representative Dean Phillips of Democrat of Minnesota, who said Biden's doing a super awesome job, but he's not the future. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know.
No, Biden, no. Joe is not the future.
No, he is not. He's not even Joe's future. He's not even Biden's future. Biden is not the future.
Joe is just about reached the finish line.
Yeah, he's going to end up as drooler in chief somewhere. Right? So,
yeah.
I don't mean to sound uncharitable, but he doesn't belong in the White House. So,
no, I don't think so either. I think so either. I think
Democrats are realizing that. But here's the interesting thing about it. So the last time an incumbent Democrat president who was assumed to be running for re-election had ended up dropping out early. The last time this happened, the exact same situation happened in 1968 when Lyndon Johnson did not appear on the New Hampshire ballot, but appealed to write-ins. His performance was so pathetic that he was forced out of the race a month later. That's the last president who was just elected in 1964 with one of the largest landslides ever.
Right.
And he dropped out a month after in 1968. And that led to a lot of stuff that happened in 1968, as we know. Apparently Representative Phillips, who's a nobody, has an ingenious strategy of just being on the ballot in New Hampshire. And he doesn't care if he gets delegates because he might.
The same strategy that GOP candidates are taking, being on the ballot.
Yeah, I know. Well, some aren't anymore. And of course, I talked on Captive Audience about that last night, but I don't I think the real race is what happens in the ensuing month leading up to Super Tuesday on March 5th, 2024. That's where the real thing's going to happen, but it could be over for Biden by then. Strangely enough.
We've talked about that on the show. We've talked about the fact that he doesn't poll well with among Democrats, and that there would be some sort of switcheroo.
Yeah, I think it's very, very realistic. So anyway, just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Meanwhile, speaking to the moniker that I chose for myself today, surveillance state dissenter. We actually have a surveillance state, and they tried to do it at the federal level, but something didn't work about it. Namely that the Ministry of Truth that Joe Biden tried to start came under investigation by Congress, and then was quickly disbanded when they found out how wildly unpopular it was turning out to be. But Lars Larson's pointing out that he said, now like a Halloween zombie, a new Ministry of Truth has crawled out of its shallow grave here in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Oregon's Secretary of State, whose name I can't even remember because that's how not noteworthy she is, has signed a contract with a company to provide new spying software to detect mis, dis, and mal information.
Yeah.
MDM is what it's called. Promises to monitor social media if we citizens say wrong things. If we engage in, hey, we've said wrong speak, right?
Yep.
Wrong think and wrong speak. It's like expressing skepticism about elections, and then the state government shuts down that First Amendment free speech, protecting those in power.
Yep.
Which is, of course, the point of the First Amendment is to protect those in power and shut down people freely expressing themselves.
Yeah.
That right?
Yeah. We saw the executive branch of the state of Oregon take this same tack in September of 2020 when all the fires were starting everywhere. That big line of huge forest fires on the east side of I-5 from border to border. Yep. And there was talk of people starting those fires, maybe Antifa, whatever. And it's my understanding the governor contacted Facebook and said, take that crap down. You couldn't say that. You couldn't say arson on social media in the state of Oregon.
Well, now they plan to kick it up a notch. They want to use artificial intelligence from a company called Logically Intelligence, whose mission is to, quote, reduce the harms associated with mis and disinformation and provide analysts with content analysis tools to detect harmful online narratives and threats at speed and at scale.
Yeah.
Quote.
We should probably test that, Kevin. Maybe test that daily. Test it daily on the page and see when it kicks in. All you have to do is say the elections are rigged. That's all you have to say.
Yeah. That's right.
All of a sudden, captive audience goes black because I just said elections are rigged.
Yes. Yeah, no, I know that we're going to show up. I think a lot of people who watch our show probably going to show up, and a lot of other folks that do something called critically and logically are going to be affected by this. And somebody got a hold of what they call an RFP, a request for proposal, of the scope of the work that was going to be needed. And it's like an early warning system for that MDM, mis, dis, and mal information, MDM. And they're going to keep on top of it as if this is somebody trying to take down the grid or terrorists trying to commit terrorist acts. And they're going to go out and analyze the origin of the threats and the spread of it, and then provide insights on how to combat it. So we can go to war with us.
Right. Terrorists trying to take down the grid, or the citizens of Oregon expressing skepticism in the integrity of Oregon's elections. Because that's my understanding. That's what this is for. The RFP was to provide this for the 2024 elections. Isn't that correct?
That's right. Yep. Yeah. They just signed the agreement last Friday with this company, apparently.
Yeah, your tax dollars at work shutting you up when you question things.
So last I checked, neither the Oregon nor U.S. constitutions assigned the government the duty of being the arbiter of truth,
right,
and the silencer of dissent.
Right.
Is that in the Constitution? Which part of the Constitution?
What's the Speech Police Amendment?
Yes.
The government shall police the speech of its citizenry and act accordingly.
And neutralize objectionable elements.
Yes. Yeah. There's, people who develop. I mean, if you were able to develop software that could, quantumly look at digital posts and bring, identify ones that have misinformation. The misinformation out there is just it's incomprehensible. I read it every day on Twitter. I read it every day on Facebook.
Oh,
And it's from both sides. You know, it's from both sides.
It's profuse.
Yeah, it's profuse. But you know, I mean, it's like 100 years ago. You know, saddling up to the soapbox that the snake oil salesman is on and listen to his spiel and go, no, I'm not going to buy that crap. You know, I mean, there's no discernment left, and the government, of course, thinks it's the arbiter of you know, protecting its citizens from everything, which I don't agree with.
Well, here's another thing that is really precious from this document. The solution must provide a means to advance the presentation of factual material and counter the erosion of trust in public institutions and election systems. So silencing people who express an opinion or state what they believe to be the truth, putting the government, particularly the Secretary of State's office, in charge of policing it and combating it. They believe this is going to prevent the erosion of trust in public institutions and election systems.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I sat around a dinner table for quite some time in Washington, D.C. shortly after the election with former White House security advisor or assistant security advisor Stephen Yates, Michael Yon, and senior editor of the Epoch Times, Jan Yakolik. And I put forward that the result of the 2020 election is that from this day forward, probably about half of the people in the United States will never have a significant confidence in the integrity of our elections again.
Yeah, that it's actually not possible to restore what at least a supermajority, if not a consensus. And it was a conscious decision. And it's funny because it started with people accusing President Trump of doing that, of corrupting the election, spending years talking about it, launching investigations and prosecuting people, all to find out it was all complete BS. They made it up. It was an phony research operation of the Clinton campaign that the deep state and the FBI and the DOJ, according to all of the Department of Justice itself now and its investigative reports, I forget which ones, what the name of the reports were, but it's the prosecutor with the bearded guy anyway. That is what they did. They accused Trump of that. Turned out to be BS, and it turned out that that's exactly not only what they were doing, but they just did it all the way through the 2020 election. And then the president of the United States himself got up in front of a nationwide debate audience and claimed a complete falsehood to be true.
Yeah,
which is that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation.
Yeah,
and the FBI, and unfortunately the Attorney General at the time, said absolutely nothing to contradict it. The election was stolen at that moment.
Yeah. You know, Marjorie said, well, what do they base their facts on? Well, they base their facts on what they want you to believe is fact. And most of that are lies. You know, it's okay to question the integrity of elections. It's okay to question government. And the fact of the matter,
it's okay to be wrong about it too. And then someone else has the right to say you're wrong and say what they think.
Yeah, and the mere fact that the state of Oregon, the Secretary of State who administers the elections in the state, is spending taxpayer money to silence this kind of questioning is very suspicious.
It is really super suspicious.
Yeah.
And actually, this is the same Secretary of State who replaced Reagan, who was busy taking what amounted to bribes from
Drug cartels.
Yeah, from drug cartels in the forms of bags of cash, which apparently now have
Literally.
been rendered illegal under Oregon. Uh,
You know,
rule.
you could probably take that to court, because what that does is that prohibits legal marijuana growers from making political donations.
That's right. Yeah, it hasn't been challenged in court yet. But you know what? I don't. I think they're just trying to get through the next election. I don't really care. If someone shows up after election day with giant bags of cash, and be like, sure, we'll figure it out. By the way, we're in charge of investigating. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take the Democrat Party of Oregon. We're going to take the former communications director for the Democratic Party of Oregon and have them investigate the Democratic Party of Oregon.
Yeah.
It could be more unbiased than that.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, there's nothing there. Cash is a perfectly acceptable option. They did that just to cover their ass.
They did.
But they have disenfranchised people who can't do business with banks, and that's a growing segment that represents about $30 billion worth of economic activity across the U.S.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I just think that they have they've stepped in it now, and they're completely committed to making sure that if you and I have a problem with what they're doing in our election, that we will be combated. We won't just be labeled as misinformation and told, and they'll tell people to ignore us. They will actively go on offense. They will go to these companies like they did in the recent past elections and tell them, take these posts down. They're false.
Yeah.
We don't like them.
Yeah. Yep. That's life in America, which is why I have absolutely no faith or no respect for anyone elected to government. There might be some good people in there, but I'll tell you what, government will just squash the good right out of them.
Well, and I'm even more concerned about people who aren't elected but are running government, because they aren't accountable at all. And it's turning out that so House Judiciary Committee chairman at the
they could be accountable to the right executive.
Well, yeah.
So the right executive could fire them.
They could, but you know what? This deep state doesn't seem like it is accountable to anyone.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't. And we don't have I wanted to use a cuss word there. We don't have anyone who ever graces the Oval Office who is willing to fire all these people.
Well, and it obviously was a huge mistake during the Trump administration, but also a lot of the stuff, people were just in disbelief that it was happening. It's happened now. So the bloom's off the rose. We can't pretend anymore. They got a clean house up there. But here's what happened is one of the few places where you can even gain visibility of this and expose it is the House Judiciary Committee. And so Jim Jordan demanded that the big tech companies turn over any records showing the Justice Department's effort to surveil or spy on congressional lawmakers and their staffs, which is entirely illegal.
Oh, God, yeah.
It is. It's almost like we don't need the Chinese and the Russians. We have Google, spying.
Well, the Chinese and the Russians have their people.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a better chance that information ends up in the hands of
Mark
the Chinese.
Meadows.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so all these companies that are running our communications infrastructure, they're going to be subpoenaed. Now, of course, if that doesn't serve the interests of the Brandon administration, then we might not get a result here, because this is the one deep flaw, is that if you decide to defy a subpoena, all you have to do is have a pal in the White House or the DOJ make it go bye-bye. That's what they're going to do, because they don't, the Congress has no ability to enforce its own actions. None.
Well, no. Why?
I believe you happen to be walking around in the Capitol building, then the Speaker can order the Capitol Police to arrest you and put you in a brig in the basement.
All right.
I don't think that's going to happen, actually, with the CEO of Google. Do you?
No, and we don't want Congress to have that power.
No, we don't. But that's why it's just showing that actually it's kind of a toothless thing. But at least someone's pursuing it. At this point, we are way down the rabbit hole. I don't know, but we have a little bit of, I think it's good news, but I have mixed feelings about it. here in Oregon, it made national news that Earl Blumenauer, the 3-decade
Bow tie bicycling, pot smoking
bow tie
representative.
That's right. He's got a bridge named after him, apparently. He's been one of the furthest left members of Congress in his tenure, but he has decided to call it quits after 3 decades. He's been in government for 50 years. He's 70.
God dang.
He's represented
Ron Wyden.
That's right. He's represented the Portland area for at the local, state, and federal level for 50 years. He's been in the U.S. House of Representatives since 1996. After then Representative Ron Wyden, who was elected to the U.S. Senate, then ascended to the Senate, and they had a special election. He's been reelected 13 times, and he always wins. He gets 70% of the vote.
Yeah.
Now, they believe
Bow tie.
that Sushila Jayapal,
Oh yeah.
the Multnomah County Commissioner, is going to announce that she's running, which means that she'll almost certainly win the primary, I suspect, but we don't know. But if she does win the primary, then she's going to win the general. That's pretty good prediction. She will join her sister from Washington State, same last name, who is one of the 4 squad members, along with AOC.
So squad gets a new member.
Squad gets a new member. And so even though we might say good riddance to Earl Blumenauer and his bow ties, actually, it's probably going to be worse.
It is going to be worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of like I can't remember the governor's name. The doctor.
Oh, Kitzhaber?
Yeah, it's kind of Kitzhaber resigning and getting Kate Brown. We all knew it'd be way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what's going to happen. I mean, and this is the thing is these folks are so old and have been there for so long.
Oh man,
anything in common with the regular folks here.
Ron Wyden was first elected to office the year I graduated high school, and I am not young.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that that Portland's federal delegation, I think we got to work on some of these other offices to make sure that we send a really good, solid group of Republicans to balance it off. That could make a difference. We're at 2 out of 6. We could get to 3.
CD4 and CD5, 6.
CD6, right? CD4 and CD6, and those districts are competitive. So we need to get all in on what we do there. Everybody in the state has to pay attention to this because that's where we can make a difference. Earl Blumenauer's replacement is going to be worse, but there's going to be jack that we can do about it. Now, it's very interesting what happened in CD5 recently. The governor, Tina Kotek, who is the most powerful Democrat in the state for sure.
Has been for a decade.
Yeah, she was speaker for a decade. Now she's governor.
Yeah.
She's decided to step into a competitive Democrat primary in CD5, which is the seat's currently held by Lori Chavez DeRemer, who won it very narrowly over what's her name, Jamie McLeod Skinner in 2022. She's decided to go into this primary and endorse one of the 3 Democrat candidates. Most people were assuming that Jamie McLeod Skinner would have the inside track for winning the nomination. She's a Bernie Sanders acolyte. She won it in 2022, and she did come very close to winning it. However, Tina Kotek has decided to endorse Janelle Bynum, which ironically is somebody who challenged Tina Kotek for the speakership a few years back.
Yeah.
Janelle is African American and would seem to represent a generation of Democrats that have moved further and further to the left. And of course, she was a big champion of Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera. The only other candidate is Metro Council President Lynn Peterson, who has Clackamas experience where they didn't like her very much, and Metro experience where nobody was doing. Yeah. But this is really putting your finger on the scale, which is something that they don't often do unless they feel strongly about it.
Yeah.
But I think they are trying to figure out how to fight primaries so that they can focus their money and resources on the general election against Lori Chavez DeRemer.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's going to be another tough race.
Yeah.
So there you have it. But we have, 6, I think, was close.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 can be won as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. A good candidate. And, this is the time of year where we start hearing from people that might be filing and announcing themselves. So I guess stay tuned on that one. But we also can't be complacent and say, well, I sure hope things go well down there, because everybody in the state is going to have to be focused on this. Because I can tell you that not only are the Democrats going to fight, this is the one thing they do well. They don't know how to defeat America's adversaries.
Governing is not their strong suit. Elections.
But elections, they sure know how to do that. And they know how to play for keeps and take no prisoners, especially with the help from the media, but also with the help of people like George Soros. And here's a fascinating little story. Everybody can go watch this, but turns out that a Soros-funded political action committee called Black Voters Matter have labeled a Black Republican candidate for Congress as an Uncle Daniel Cameron, as in an Uncle Tom. And so a PAC.
Obviously a wrong thinker.
Yeah, wrong thinker, exactly. So a PAC funded by a white guy from Hungary who wants to affect races that involve Black candidates is calling a Black candidate who's a Republican an Uncle Tom. And the ad actually says, in the campaign ad, it says, "Skin folk ain't kinfolk." I know. That guy being drummed out of politics and investigated for being racist. I mean, they do it with everything else. Why not him?
Well, they know their base, don't they?
They do, yeah.
They're
Which is
their base.
white suburban women who like to do whatever Black Lives Matter organizations tell them to do, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that and the fact that most of the white lefties are about as racist as they come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, look at Joe Biden. Guy can't actually utter a sentence talking about a Black person without saying something racist.
Yeah.
About the Black person.
Yeah. It's ingrained in him. He's been that way for 50 years in Congress. He's put more Black people in prison than any other, probably whitey in Congress. So
than any other of the Cracker Caucus. Is that
it?
The
Cracker Caucus. Yeah. 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 Well, it's so typical, of the left. Guy shows up with the right color. Oh hell, he's a wrong thinker.
Yeah, he's a wrong thinker, and that is the real discrimination. That's the real focus of what they're doing. Race is just a weapon. They don't care what color you are. They care that you just repeat the narratives and follow and comply with whatever instructions are being issued by the authoritarian socialists that run all these organizations and many institutions in this country.
Yeah. And if not, get to the back of the bus.
That's right. Yeah, because you're an Uncle Tom, apparently.
Yep.
Well, so just returning to Gaza and the stuff that's been going on there, that's, been taking place here for about a week and a half. There's a lot of activity, and we know that Israel's starting to go and do the unthinkable, the unforgivable, is defend itself against
Right.
Hamas and remove Hamas as a threat.
Right.
While
Right.
Hamas actually prevents civilians
Right.
from fleeing from the fighting so that
Yeah.
they can stay there as human shields.
Yep.
That's a war crime. It's a crime against humanity. But the UN voted to condemn Israel instead.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, not surprising, I guess, but they're barbarians. It wouldn't. I wouldn't think twice if Israel went in there and killed them all. And that's exactly what they need to do. They need to go in there and kill every last single Hamas member and supporter. And if that's half of the people there, then that's half of the people there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you need to. That's what any other country. That's you. Nobody would say jack if you did. Germany or Argentina or Japan, whatever. They would no. The UN wouldn't say jack if their neighbor came in and did those kind of things, and they went in there and killed all those people. I mean, Israel has a right to defend itself. They have an army. They're not. They're not. This ain't 1939.
No, and they have a right under the UN Charter itself. It's like the UN just condemned the Charter by saying you don't have the right to self-defense. And so here's what's happening. So let's take this down to Oregon. So here's some of the news relating to the Gaza war, or whatever they're calling it now. So apparently, a former Portland student, somebody who was at the Portland Jewish Academy, a place that I remember my sons played indoor soccer at. They have a really nice indoor soccer facility there.
Mm-hmm.
The Portland Jewish Academy. The mother of a girl named Shani Luke, an Israeli German woman who used to live in Portland, she's dead. The mother explained that the Israeli military did find a DNA sample taken from a skull that confirmed this. Apparently, she was so destroyed or massacred that they had to use DNA to identify her, and apparently. People all over the country are tearing down posters that are commemorating the people who were massacred.
Yeah.
That's happening in England. It's happening in New York City. It's happening
most assuredly in Portland.
Well, in the University of Penn Library, a place you'd think people wouldn't be doing that, but they are. Poor girl. The people who did this are animals.
Yeah.
And you don't deal with them by saying, let's have a ceasefire. But you know what? That apparently is not the way Portland marchers view this. And that's how they're describing people who are calling for genocide, as they are just marchers. So the Willamette Week said, I know, they're just marchers. And
they're not Nazis, because that's what they were in the 1930s, late 1930s. Can we just use the word properly now?
The pro-genocide people, Nazis, right?
Yeah.
But they are demanding that Jeff Merkley call for a ceasefire in Gaza, because what you do when somebody's trying to kill you is you agree to a ceasefire, so they have more time to kill you and you not kill them. That's what you do. And so, and this, they're claiming numbers about how many Palestinians have been killed, but unfortunately, they're in a war zone where they're apparently not allowed to flee by people who are truly responsible for the deaths, which is Hamas.
Yeah.
This is just one march from across the country, but here's the rally that was saying this in Portland was organized by a group called Free People of Portland. So apparently the idea, just the misnomers, they have visible support from the Portland chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America.
Yeah, I saw the DSA was behind them.
Yep. And they're marching around downtown around Merkley's office at the World Trade Center, saying,
what was the name of that? What was the name of that party in Germany? The Democratic Socialist.
The National Socialists are the Nazis. National Socialists. That's right. Yeah. So this is what is happening in Portland, and Of course, Merkley does not denounce them. He just says that he respects the right of all of his constituents to exercise the First Amendment right to peacefully protest. Except for the ones
Right.
who say something skeptical about an election. Then
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, grandmas that went to the Capitol building looking for a toilet on January 6th.
Right.
Get them.
Or a black guy running for office that doesn't parrot the narrative, you know.
Yeah, so there are some exceptions, but as a rule, he believes that at least people that are committing horrific terrorist actions have the right to call for those terrorist actions. And so, but he's also saying that he supports Israel's right to defend itself. I will give him credit for that. And we'll see how long he lasts under the pressure from the groups that generally are his supporters. This is starting to have an effect on.
I hope it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I do too. I hope there's a lot of pressure on him, and let's see how long it takes for him to buckle. But here's what's fascinating about this. So at the national level, the Biden administration is actually sending U.S. aid to Palestine, to the Gaza Strip. And here's what happens with aid that goes to the Gaza Strip. They say, this is just humanitarian aid, so please give it to the people who need it. And Hamas, who controls everything there, says, okay, thank you. And then they use it to make sure that they keep all the fighters fed while civilians starve and get killed.
Yep.
And Victoria Coates, who's the vice president of foreign policy at the Heritage Foundation, just said that, spelled out. She said, this is the very definition of insanity. Just point, stop. We have to end this fantasy that it's somehow going to make a beneficial difference. They're sending $100 million.
Whose $100 million was that, Kevin?
Ours, the federal government. Yeah, taxpayers. So this is the decision being made on their behalf. Now, I think this might explain one of the reasons why.
Got to keep him alive long enough for Israel to kill him. I mean,
why don't we call that? We'll call that harm reduction for Hamas. Harm reduction for Hamas. Okay.
Yeah. Here's some needles. Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah. Here's some food. Stay alive long enough to get blown up. Good
luck. Yeah. Israel's going to find you soon, so eat up.
Well, so
yeah, Lori's got it right. You know, how much of that $100 million gets washed back too? You know, that's the part that really bothers me about foreign aid, because some of that stuff is being skimmed off and handed back to those people that gave our money to them.
Yeah, plus it's probably ending up in Swiss bank accounts of Hamas people that aren't even in the Gaza Strip. You know, it's in Qatar or someplace where they're hiding out. That's what they're going to do. It's totally corrupt, and it's not going to help anybody, and it could be making things worse. But here's a clue as to why the Brandon administration might be doing this. Muslim Democrats have given Joe Biden an ultimatum. They said, Israel ceasefire by 5 or battleground states will be turned red. We will mobilize increased voter turnout to make our voices heard, which they say the National Muslim Democrat Council threatened Joe Biden that if he does not force Israel to reach a ceasefire with Hamas by 5 p.m. today, Eastern time, which is hours ago, they will work to mobilize against him in the 2024 election. I don't know. Is there a silver lining here or what? They said, simply put, as Gaza turns red, so could crucial battleground states. That might explain the $100 million in aid. It's actually a campaign contribution.
Payoff, yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. You know, I'm sure there's got to be reasonable people of the Muslim faith that think that Hamas is just absolute shit, right? I mean, just scum of the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it appears, and I don't know the intricacies or the details, but it appears that no one over there in the Arab world is willing to take these Gazan refugees, right? I mean, it's not like Syria is coming to the rescue, or Egypt, or or Saudi Arabia. Uh, so I guess I just don't get it. I mean,
Well, I do. I know why. Every place that a Palestinian refugee camp ended up destabilized the country they were in, and in a lot of those instances, the host country, who cares so much about them, kicks them out.
Yeah, well, Jordan, I guess, has got a huge population of Israeli Arabs.
That's right.
And apparently they're a problem. And apparently they're large enough that some lip service needs to be given by the king or whoever it is of Jordan that runs things there to them to appease them so they don't, burn down their own neighborhoods, because I think that's what those kind of people do. But yeah, I mean, we've seen some strides in the Middle East. I mean, it appears that, Egypt has made peace with Israel. And Jordan seems to be able to coexist next to Israel. But these Gazans and Israeli Arabs I mean, they believe that somehow that's their homeland, and they're off by 1,800 years. So they're
Yeah, they're just off by a little bit. And there's this thing called the Bible, which documents pretty clearly who,
yeah. I mean, they're lucky. They're lucky the Israelis haven't taken all of their promised land yet, because that would include Saudi Arabia and Iran and a good portion of Egypt and Jordan and
Well, and every time the Arabs attacked, they lost land. It was sort of like it reminds me of that Monty Python sketch when you got the guy that says, you shall not pass, and he goes to combat him, and then he gets like his arm cut off, and he goes, oh, it's a mere flesh wound, and then he comes back again to attack him, and he cuts off his legs, and he's got no legs, and he goes, come back here, I'll bite your knee. It's like the Arab like that knight who just never is willing to meet. He goes, come back, you yellow-bellied.
Well, the hardliners are a lot like me. They say that Israel doesn't exist, and I heard somebody ask the question, well, who's kicking your ass in all these wars then?
That's right.
Because you guys are getting whomped.
I know it's Halloween, but I doubt if a giant ghost took them all out. But then again, go read the Bible. It usually didn't work out too well when somebody went after the Israelis. They tended to have an ace in the hole. Let's put it that way. Well, our last story here is really just an editorial, which I just wanted to take a moment to laugh, because it's the Bend Bulletin editorial board saying that Measure 113 was actually a flop in stopping walkouts and in clarity. In other words, the people who wrote it, put it in front of the voters, apparently had a big, massive, giant F up because they said that if you get 10 unexcused absences, which we knew was an arbitrary decision by the speaker or the Senate president, of what's excused and what not, like no excuse you can't get excused for going to church, but you can get excused for a variety of other things that comport with the ideology of the Democrat Party. But it said for the term following the election after the member's term is completed. The plain language of the law that people voted for is pretty much going to make this a complete piece of nonsense. It's garbage.
Yeah, it is. They ought to send it back to the voters again, just like they need to do with 110. We keep. I'm not real hip on the whole initiative process, because I think it circumvents what should be the representative republic process, even though we don't really have that in Oregon. But voters are, well, they're not real informed, let's say, and they keep voting this crap in, and it doesn't work. And the people that bring these initiatives to the ballot know that voters, can't discern what is actually going to happen.
Yeah, you'll talk about mis, dis, and malinformation. The source of the mis, dis, and malinformation is actually the government itself, who decided to make the ballot titles. They corrupted the ballot titles so that the people voting for it actually had no idea what they're voting for, or actually thought it was a completely innocuous thing, like, oh, a tax on cannabis sales to fund drug treatment. And by the way, class, when blah, 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 drugs are decriminalized, $100
Yeah.
citation that you don't have to pay, and
Yeah.
you can make a phone call, make it go away.
Yeah.
This
Well, they did get 16 phone calls. So
Yeah, that's right. They got 16 people into treatment out of like 16,000 or something that received citations. And then lo and behold, the police said, I don't think there's any use in handing these out. Crazy, but all these guys, I think most of the citations probably got lit by the same
yeah.
lighter that was being used to light the fentanyl at the end of the straw and the foil.
Right. Right.
What they should do is make the citations out of foil and have a real use. That's
There
what
you-
they should do.
Yeah. Except for that would put the NGOs out of business.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. The police would get all the business. We can't have that.
Yeah.
I've got a 6-figure income to maintain.
Yeah.
But,
we got $1 billion to spread around.
That's right. People need these straws and foil. We're vital to the community. So anyway, I just thought I'd share how they're beginning to realize that it was a complete disaster, and let's all laugh at them for several minutes after the show's over. But you're right. The corruption that's happened to the ballot titles, it's ended the usefulness of most stuff that gets on the ballot. Plus, people don't know what they're talking about because the media tells them what? Nothing,
Right. Right. People believe what they hear, unfortunately.
Well, that is a wrap for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Faith in Congress, LOL, for joining me here tonight. I appreciate it, David. And thank you for all of you watching. Share this with everyone you can. We brought some important news that people probably didn't hear, especially the part about Biden in New Hampshire. I literally didn't know that until seconds before we went live in the air.
Wow.
And by the way, say hi to Secretary of State, everyone. I'm Mr. Surveillance State Dissenter, and they're listening to us. Be loud, be bold, and do not comply, as David likes to say. And we will see you tomorrow on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Good night, everyone.